Hi, it's me, Jean Harville, and I am the founder of Raising Kids Who Love to Read, and I'm also the creator of Rethink Learning Academy. So I just wanted to come today. We're going to continue our Train Your Brain series, right? I wanted to start out with a story. So just hang with me just a little bit. I'm going to think through the story, and I want you to think through your own story when you were growing up and if any of this resonates with you, all right? So it's talking about being a parent, being the parent that our kids need us to be when maybe we have some things in our background that are preventing us from parenting the way we want to parent our kids. So here's a story, okay? Are your old stories holding back your child? How are your old stories holding back your child? So, do you remember when you were young? Like, you loved the freedom of being a child. You loved, like, playing, being Superwoman, and you loved to pretend like you were making this amazing cake, right? And as you got older, you loved baking in the kitchen, right? You liked baking things for cookies and cakes and maybe some meals for your family. You felt so great about it that you made such a great dish or cookies, and they were wonderful, right? And so, you thought that you were feeling accomplished and amazing. And there were comments made, kind of by the way, like, look at this mess that we need to clean up, or I need to add those ingredients to the shopping list next time we go because we kind of ran out. And you kind of let that go. You don't really think much about it, right? And these are just some comments that were made either by your mom or someone, in the family. And then you kind of say, okay, well, yeah, right, whatever. You take it in stride. You don't worry about it because you're a happy-go-lucky child, and you felt really great about the accomplishments that you did in the kitchen, right? And so, in school, you did the best that you could also. So, like, you could never get that A that you wanted, that maybe your sister made, but you got B's and C's, and you're like, well, okay, that's fine. I got B's and C's, and perhaps maybe after moving into a new city, a new school, and figuring out your way around that school, especially like in middle school when you have the schedule where you have to go to your locker and you have all these other classes that you have to find, and you are coming in like a year after everyone else has been there and they know where everything is, and you're still trying to figure things out, looking at the doors and, and at the numbers and everything. You look like this confused student, right? And maybe even walking into that wrong classroom, and you're like, you know what, I'm smart enough, I can figure this out. But then it starts, just different things start happening, and you have everyone like turn and look at you as you walk into the wrong classroom, and you're like, oh, this is not so good. You fumble a little bit with your lock. You're wanting to look good, like you know what you're doing, but other students are kind of standing by watching, kind of snickering a little bit, like she doesn't know what she's doing. Middle school, it's kind of a rough time of growing up, right? Trying to figure out who you are, and everyone else is trying to figure out who they are too. So perhaps you really didn't believe it because at home your parents supported you, or so you thought. They praised you and helped you, and you start to feel a little bit unsure about yourself, especially when you're out there among your peers. It's a bit of not enoughness starts creeping in. You start comparing yourself with the other kids other students that are in the school, and you start feeling like, I'm not as good as they are, or I'm not enough. And, like those B's and C's continue even into middle school. Maybe, they're like, automatically just show up on your paper. Like, I don't know whenever an A is going to show up. Your presentations are not as good as you expect that they should be. You're solidifying your brain that emotion of frustration of, why can't I get that good grade? And maybe some anger shows up, and you start seeing the thoughts of not enough, I can't measure up to my classmates, start flooding into your brain. And you develop, your subconscious brain is listening, and it says, okay, that's what you're wiring. Now, your brain does not think things as good or bad or anything. It's just, it's accepting whatever you're wiring into your brain. And when you start wiring negative thoughts into your brain about not feeling enough, and you put an emotion with that, with maybe anger or frustration or the way, or sadness, or the way that you're feeling, that couples together develops beliefs. And these beliefs, are wired into your brain. And your brain doesn't say this is right or wrong. It's just there, and it's just accepting whatever it is that you are putting in, what you're telling your brain to believe, right? So you show up feeling insecure in a crowd. You silently listen. You don't dare open your mouth, and talk, because, you kind of disappear into that crowd. You feel safer being just part of the crowd and not really opening up, because perhaps maybe you have tried this in the past and no one listened to you. They kind of like ignored you or just kept speaking over you. And so you're like, okay, I'm just going to stay back here. I'll be a part of the crowd, but I'm not enough. I'm not enough to be part of this group. So you fast forward into adulthood, and you marry, you have children, and you notice patterns begin to emerge, and your child bakes that cake, and the only thing you can think about is, man, look at all those dishes I need to clean up, and then, oops, I need to make sure I put that on the grocery list because we are out of flour now. You receive notes from the teacher that your child isn't motivated to read. They are struggling with self-confidence. You flash back to your own childhood, and you see the same patterns of not enoughness showing up in your child, and your heart, breaks for that. Your heart starts to ache because you know exactly how your child is feeling. This happened to you when you were a child. So you notice that you hold back from becoming involved in your child's school, like PTA, or your church committees, because you still don't feel good enough to think that what you have to say is of any value, right? So this pattern is still continuing. How do we stop this pattern? How can you parent your child when you aren't showing up, or inadvertently, and not on purpose, saying comments that could make them feel small or not enough? Maybe these were comments that your parents said, and at the time they didn't seem to be a big deal, but you are now remembering that some of the slide looks or size or whatever were meaning that you weren't living up to their expectation. And so this kind of, it sort of like plays on your heart, and you know that you wouldn't consciously say these things to your child, but actions speak louder than words. I know in my family, it was more of the actions, exacerbation, like rolling of the eyes, or just kind of, those types of things. I picked up on them because I'm very, very sensitive. Maybe you're a very sensitive person, or very, very sensitive when you were a child. You picked up on things, but that may not have even had a meaning behind them from whence they came from, but you took it in as, I'm not good enough, I'm just not, I don't know what I'm doing. And so, these old stories start impacting your life now as a mom. And you're thinking, I don't want to put this thought or these ideas into my own child, because I remember the struggle that I had growing up. Now, your childhood situation may look, probably does look different than mine. Everyone is different. Everyone is unique. Everyone accepts and takes comments in their own way. And, you can think back to your own childhood stories as to when you felt like you weren't enough, or didn't feel safe, or maybe you didn't feel loved, that there's certain things you were expected to do, or you did them because you thought, well, if I clean up the house, my mom will love me more. Or if I, whatever, if I did this, then I'll be accepted more, or whatever, what I'm saying? It's like, think back on some things that happened that stand out to you as a child, and how you perceive them, and what do you think the messaging is running through your brain now? It's not your fault, totally not your fault, because remember, you're parenting your child, your parents parented you, their parents parented them, so they're carrying forward old habits or patterns that they were brought up with. So sometimes they, may inadvertently, if they haven't been able to rewire or to take those out of their neural network, process that it carried over to you. And now you now have the opportunity, because in neuroscience in the past several decades, a lot of research has been done, and a lot more understanding of how the brain wires and how beliefs and emotions, well, over time, if you have to get that continual thought and paired with that emotion over time, it will hardwire into your subconscious brain. And your subconscious brain job is to protect you. 90% of your thinking is just automatic. It just comes out of your mouth. And have you ever heard the words that your mom said, and at the time you cringed, but you hear them come out of your mouth, and you say the same thing to your own child, and you're like, where did that come from? And I'm like, oh, I just heard my mom come out of my mouth. And so you're like, how did that happen? Because that is hardwired into your brain when you were a child. So what do we do to make those changes? All right. So number one, what I want you to do is I want you to notice all negative thoughts that come through your head. Oh, for over to now until Tuesday when I do another live. Just jot them down. Write them with a pen or pencil on paper. Don't just type them in your computer, not on your phone, but actually write down those negative thoughts. That it could be small. It could be, let's say, I'm not a good cook. I don't know how to fix a hem or something like that, or just whatever negative thought. I'm not accepted in this group. Whenever I speak or say something, they just roll their eyes at me, or something like that. Whatever's negative that's coming through your brain, whatever's come through your brain, write it down. Just write it down. I expect to see a list, a long list of things that are running through your brain, and do that. Do that for yourself. Then I want you to go through every negative comment, and I want you to think back in the past how that is not true. Absolutely is not true. That's a false statement. For example, I wrote example down for me is that my negative thought is that, I'm not enough. If I join this committee, like the PTA or something at school, then no one's going to listen to me. Well, my refuting thought is, I volunteered to make decorations for the play that my child was in, and everyone loved it. Okay? So that was another way that I could contribute and still feel good, like, wow, and validate that I felt really good because the decorations that I made, that's more of my strength. And that made me feel really good. That's kind of like, yes, I'm valued. I am important. Especially when they ask you again to make decorations again, right? So you feel like, I am important. I am valued. I'm using the way that my passion, I'm using, the way I was created in the right way. And so, I want you to go through each of those negative thoughts and just write evidence in the past where those thoughts were not true. They're not true. They're not true. And write out evidence, and you'll see some contrast there. And just do that for yourself if you want to show up for your child as the parent that they need to have. They need to have to parent them through their trials and tribulations and whatever that goes on with them. So, like I said, next Tuesday, I'm going to tell you the next step in changing that messaging that's running in your brain, in your neural pathway, that is repeating that you're not enough, or that you're not safe, or that you're not loved. And those are three basic things that humans really value, and that really makes us feel important, feel loved, and feel safe. So, thank you for listening to this live and listening through my story. And I hope that it's a story would help, like you could resonate with that story and kind of see patterns that have been going in your life, and what's showing up, and maybe what's showing up now as you are parenting your child, and how you want to change some of those things that you're saying or doing with your child. So, like I say, if you resonate with this story, That's awesome. Now, I would love for you to join us, and if you're not already a member of the Raising Kids Who Love to Read Facebook group, it's a free Facebook group by Jean Harville. I would love for you to connect with us and come join us. And there's a learn more button at the top of this page. You can click the video and go to the page, and then you can come join us, or you can look up in Facebook, to Raising Kids Who Love to Read. And that's another way that you can find the group as well. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And if you're just popping on, you could wait for the rewind and watch the video from the very beginning. So I will talk to you all later. All right, bye-bye.